Well, as Raina said, we're beginning a new series, and we're going to talk about money for two reasons. Number one is because you care about it. And there are a number of studies that say as such. I will not quote them all to you, but they all say the number one cause of stress for everyone from Gen Z all the way up to the oldest among us is money. The American Psychological Association conducted a survey and found that 81% of Gen Z said they are stressed about finances more than any other topic. We have anxiety, and it's about money. And I gotta tell you, I've seen that to be true. It was interesting for me this week. I talked to a member of our church who is extremely wealthy, and I visited and prayed with a brother in our church who is currently without a job and without a home. And both of them came to me because they wanted to talk about money. And actually what they both wanted to talk about was their anxiety about money. And so I want to talk about it, even though, to be honest with you, as your pastor, I have at times avoided this topic. I need to repent of that. And I'll tell you why I avoided it is because I know that there's a lot of mistrust in the world today about religious figures talking about money. I was on a plane this week flying home, and the guy sitting next to me recognized me because he goes to our church. And he said, "Are you starting a new series?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "What's it about?" And I said, "It's about money." And as soon as I said that, the flight attendant rolled up with the cart and looked at him and said, "You a preacher?" I don't know why he thought he was a preacher, not me. He never looked at me. But he goes, "You're not one of those prosperity ones, are you?" I can't stand them. You're like, wow, just came right out the gate with that. But I understand it. I mean, I read a Christian news website every week, and every week I am perpetually disappointed by Christian leaders who name Christ and yet get caught doing something illegal or suspect in the pursuit of money, fame, or power. So I understand why people have a mistrust. But I think it's been wrong for me to avoid the topic because of that, because then who does that leave to talk about it? And so what I want to do today is honestly not give Ben's speech about money. I don't think you need that. What I want to do today is just walk us verse by verse through Jesus' speech about money. So we're talking about money for two reasons. You care about it, and because Jesus cares about it. He talks about it a lot. And he has a lot to say about it. But I think the way Jesus talks about it may be different than some of you expect. And so that's why we entitled this series, Treasure and Heart. And what I want to do is just walk through this message. And we're really starting mid-conversation. But I think you'll pick up on where we are as we go. So again, in verse 11, this is Jesus talking. And he's talking to his followers, and he says, when they bring you before the synagogues and the rulers and the authorities, don't be anxious about how you should defend yourselves or what you should say. For the Holy Spirit will teach you in that very hour what you ought to say. So again, we're picking up mid-conversation, but I think as you read that, you can feel the intensity of it. Jesus is telling his disciples, you're gonna pay a heavy price because you're associated with me. It will cost you. And people with authority will malign you and bring you into court. It will threaten your life. He says, you're gonna pay a heavy price for associating with me, and God won't spare you from that pain, but he will use that pain for a purpose. He's saying there's a mission, and it's worth suffering for and worth dying for. So it's interesting, he's preparing for them to suffer and die for their faith, but he's not being cavalier with their life. What he's actually doing is saying, hey, I'm inviting you to a cause that's worthy of your life. Your life is valuable. Make sure you spend it on something of value. And he said, I'm putting you into a cause that is worthy of your life and may cost you your life. It's gonna put you in some intense situations, but when you're in those moments of trial, the very Spirit of God will empower you to take a stand and to speak the truth on that difficult day. This is a serious conversation. And in the middle of that intense call from Jesus to his people, a man interrupts him. And it says in verse 13, someone in the crowd says, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." What? That is not what we're talking about at all. We talk about adventures and missing the point. The Son of God, the maker of the stars, is telling you your purpose in life. And this guy goes, yeah, but Jesus, what about the money? I need money, right? This guy's got his mind on his money and his money on his mind. And in the middle of this, He is missing the point. Is it possible to entirely miss the moment in history you're standing in? Yes, it is. And here this guy is talking to the man who made the mountains, and all he's thinking about is his money. Now, presumably this man's father died, and it was common in those days that all the inheritance would go to the firstborn. And here this guy is looking like he's probably secondborn. He's gonna miss out. And so he sees Jesus, and rather than listening to what Jesus says about the purpose of life, he sees Jesus as an opportunity. Here's a guy with some authority. Oh, I'm gonna get him to squeeze my brother so he can split up the inheritance with me, right? So notice, money is his mission, Jesus is his means. I'm trying to get to money, maybe I can use you to get some. Because he doesn't have any. So another note, is it possible to love money when you don't have any? Yes. And so Jesus is gonna address the heart here in a moment, right? This guy is missing the point. And so in verse 14, Jesus responds and he says to him, man, who made me a judge or arbiter over you? Jesus' response is, what? You're turning this into like a legal case? Like what? That's not what I'm doing here. There's a mission mismatch in this moment. You and I are going different directions here. Is it possible to sit in church and have a heart that's entirely misaligned with the purposes of God for your life? Yes, it is. And Jesus' word choice here is fascinating, isn't it? Who made me into an arbiter for you? Who's the maker that makes me into a tool for your benefit? So who's Lord? Am I Lord or am I your servant? You tell me what to do to get you your money? Or do I tell you what to do because I made your life and I know what life's about? Well, he doesn't let the guy answer. Jesus takes the opportunity in verse 15. It says, and he said to them. So he turns from the guy to address the crowd who he had been addressing and got interrupted. And he turns to them and says, take care, be on your guard against all covetousness. He looks at this moment and goes, guys, beware of greed. So this dude just became an object lesson. Oops, you know? And Jesus issues a warning with two commands. Take care, it's the word to look, to see. Hey, look, be on the lookout. And then he says, be on your guard. That's stand ready or watch. Be on the lookout and get in a defensive posture, right? He doesn't say stop chasing money or don't chase covetousness. He says it's coming for you. Covetousness is coming for your heart. If you were in fencing and I say, on guard, what does that mean? You better get your guard up because I'm coming for you, right? And Jesus says here, covetousness, which is in Greek is a fascinating word. It's a combination of the word of much and have. It's the desire to have much. And he says, you need to be careful because that desire is coming for you. I'm not telling you to stop chasing it. I'm telling you, you're living your life and the desire to have much is coming for your heart. So look for it and get ready for it. Get in your stance because it's coming at you, right? And you got to be ready. Covetousness is coming for your heart. And you got to be on guard. Why? Well, he gives you a reason. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. Be on guard against it because this desire will deceive you concerning the meaning of life. The desire to have much, watch against it. Why? Because that's not what life's about. Life does not consist of the abundance of possessions. The danger of greed is it will cause you to aim at the wrong thing and miss what really matters. The danger of this desire is that it'll distract you from life's true purpose. That's Jesus' concern. So notice, Jesus' main concern is not your money. Jesus' main concern is your mission. What are you aiming at? And I want you to hear what's under that. I remember hearing a pastor say this to me when I was part of his church, and it was so meaningful. He looked at us and he said, your life is valuable. Make sure you spend it in the pursuit of something worthy of that value. And Jesus is here saying, your life is valuable. Don't take your life and spend it in the pursuit of things. That's a waste of your life. It's missing the mission for which you've been made. Jesus is trying to aim them at something worthy. And here, this is going to be a threat. This desire will derail you from your purpose, right? And so here Jesus speaks to them about it, and he tells them a parable. Verse 16, he told them a parable. Parable is a great word in Greek. Para means alongside, and bole means to throw. They're stories that when Jesus is making a point, if you're missing the point, he tells you a story. And if you get the story, you get the point. He kind of throws it alongside and says, you get this, you get that. So he starts to tell a story about greed. And so he illustrates it saying, the land of a rich man produced plentifully. And he thought to himself, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. So something happens to the guy in the story. He's got money. He had a good year. His land produced a lot of crops, which creates a problem. What do I do with my excess because I lack storage capacity, right? I mean, this guy runs into an age-old problem. It's like the more crops we come across, the more problems we see, right? And that's where he is. Now he's got to figure out what to do. This is what's called a good problem. Where do I store all this money? Right? And he comes up with a solution. Verse 18, he says, I'll do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store in all my grain and my goods. I got a lot of grain, got a lot of goods. What am I gonna do? Tear down these little barns, build bigger barns, and store them all there. So that's the solution. And then verse 19, he says, and then I will speak to my soul. Soul, you have ample goods, laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. It's interesting, so remember, Jesus is kicking this off because there was a guy with no money saying, give me some money. And so Jesus tells a story about a guy with tons of money and stores it and tells his soul to relax, right? So whether you have a little bit of money or a lot of money, there's a threat to your heart for both of you, right? And so he tells the story, I got a problem, bumper crop. I got a solution, tear down my barns. And then my self-talk, soul, relax, okay? The assumption there is when I get enough money, I'll be able to relax and then eat, drink, and be merry. I'll be able to enjoy life. What's the mindset? Money will give me security and satisfaction. What will make me feel safe against the ills of this life? Money. What will satisfy me and give me joy in life? Money. And so this rich man believes I crossed the finish line. I succeeded. I did it. But then God assesses him in the next verse. Jesus always likes to put a twist in a story. And here's the twist. Verse 20. But God said to him, fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you prepared, whose will they be? So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God. This is a terrible turn of events. You do not want to die, and when you face the Almighty, for him to say to you, well, that was stupid. What? The whole, your life? Your choices? But that's what's happening here. Now, for some of us, that's confusing because you're like, I don't know, I thought the guy was being fairly responsible. He made an income and invested it, and you're telling me that's dumb? Like, why? I suddenly hate this place. Like, what is going on here? Fools misread moments. And so Jesus is gonna unpack why this guy's a fool. The danger of possession is distortion of perspective and derailing of purpose. And that's what you're gonna see happen to this guy. What's the distortion of perspective? You were wrong about your soul. Notice he said, this night your soul will be required of you. Required means to pay back a loan. The problem when you start to get money is like, you think you own stuff. And he goes, no, that soul was on loan. I made you for a purpose. And you didn't even ask me what that purpose was. But you thought money was gonna solve it? And so you just accumulated a bunch of it? No, you didn't earn that life. I gave you that life and I gave it to you for a purpose. And you missed out on the purpose of your life. You were wrong about your soul, you don't own it. And you were wrong about your goods. You don't own those either. Notice he said, my crops, my barns, my grain, my good, my soul, I'll keep it for a long time. But you were wrong about time. You thought that money was gonna keep you safe? You're still gonna die. And you're gonna die, it will not keep you safe and it will not be yours. It will go to someone else. And you don't even know exactly whose hands it will land in. This is what God warned people in the Old Testament in Deuteronomy about. He said, I'm gonna put you in this land and I'm gonna bless you, and be careful. He said, the danger of money is once I start blessing you, you'll say, my hands have gotten me this wealth. As soon as you begin to accumulate the security and satisfaction that possessions bring, you will think you're a king. You're like the steward of Gondor in Lord of the Rings. You were meant to be a steward, and yet you got used to the comforts, and now you abandoned your role as a steward. You want to be ruler, and it's ugly, especially the way you eat grapes. I don't know if you saw it, it's gross, right? Because you distorted your perspective and you've derailed from your purpose. And here's the biggest tragedy of all. You missed the one who owns your soul. You never stopped to consider his concerns. You didn't align with his purposes. You missed the moment. You missed your life. Your mission is wrong. Your means were wrong. Now, let me clarify here. Is it wrong to save? Some of you are like, wait a minute, I thought we were supposed to save money. Like, is it wrong to save? It is not wrong to save. Proverbs says that a righteous man leaves an inheritance for his grandkids. But notice he leaves it for his grandkids. Notice in this text, what was the problem? That you stored up for himself. I'm possessing these things for me. The Bible's not anti-saving for the sake to bless others. It's anti-hoarding to satisfy yourself, right? Is it wrong to spend? No, you can certainly eat, drink, and enjoy your life, but that is not what life is about. It's interesting, I listened to an interview with Tim Ferriss. He's got like a leadership podcast. He was being asked in an interview about success, and he told the story about a friend of his who works on Wall Street, and he said, my buddy was relaying to me a moment where there was a man who was widely regarded as the most successful stockbroker on Wall Street. Everybody wanted to be like him. He said, but what my buddy knew about him, because he was mentored by him, is that he carried in his briefcase divorce papers at all times. Because he'd been successful at earning money, but his family was in shambles. His marriage was in shambles. His life was coming apart. So yeah, the suit was a nice thread count, but the threads of his life were unraveling. And he said, and I was told he's the most successful man on Wall Street, and he said, he hit me, is that success? Is the accumulation of possessions success? That's the danger of money. It'll distort your purpose. Priorities, and it'll derail your purpose. You'll start to think that the accumulation of things is why you're here, and it is not. Right? And so Jesus moves from the story, and this is what I love about Jesus. He doesn't just shame the guy. He doesn't say, so fool, and y'all are all fools too. If you're not giving generously, he doesn't shame us for wanting money. Look what he does in the next verse, verse 22. And he said to his disciples, therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat, nor about your body, what you'll put on. Isn't that great? Jesus doesn't just move to money. So like, that fool hoarded his money, y'all give your money. Jesus goes to the root problem. What makes us want to hoard possessions? What makes us want to hoard money? It's not just that you're monsters. It's anxiety that leads us to pursue money. And so Jesus, as the good counselor, says to his disciples, don't be anxious. Let me address underneath the money, the anxiety. Because anxiety is the engine that drives you to pursue money, right? I'm scared I won't be provided for. I'm scared I won't be safe. And I'm scared I won't be satisfied. And so I have to hustle and accumulate. That's the dangerous thing. I have to hustle to be happy. I've got to store up to be safe. And Jesus is going to address that. And yet for many of us, you hear that and you go, no, but Ben, the world is crazy. The world is unsafe. I need money and possibly a bunker somewhere. So why is he saying this? Well, let's just keep moving to the sermon. The world is crazy. The world is volatile, but you think money's going to keep you safe? Verse 23, your life is more than food, the body more than clothing. Jesus is again back to mission. Hey, your soul was a gift. Your abilities are a gift. Your life is a gift. And your life is about more than your livelihood. Your life's valuable. Aim it at something of value. And pursuit of accumulation is not the answer for your longing for meaning and purpose. Anxiety will motivate you, but often not in the right direction. So don't miss your life's mission. And Jesus illustrates, verse 24. Consider the ravens. They neither sow nor reap. They have neither storehouses nor barns, yet God feeds them. Of how much more value are you than the birds? He says, consider the ravens, which for them were considered the least of all birds. So Jesus picks the ugliest, most despised bird. Look at the grossest birds. He says, they do stuff, but you know what they don't do? They don't hustle and they don't store, but God feeds them. Did you notice what Jesus just did? He added into the equation what the rich man left out. The rich man was, I am unsafe and insecure. Money. Money will make me safe. Money will satisfy my heart. I think of it like a lab experiment. Like if you're in the lab and you go, we've got to create meaning and happiness. Okay, let me add some money. No, we haven't done it yet. Okay, let me add some more money. Let me add money. Let me add money. And you're like, no. You know what you're missing? God. And there's something about the catalytic chemical of God that changes the equation. And when you cut him out, you got a whole different story. And so that's what Jesus intersects here. What's the problem with this guy's whole mindset? It cuts out the reality of God. And as a believer in God, you don't eliminate that from the equation. When you add God in, it changes the chemical composition. So when you're scared about your money, you got to ask yourself, where am I going to find my security? Where am I going to find satisfaction? Am I living as if no God exists? Or is your faith in your hustle? Or is your faith in your maker? He says the birds do stuff. The birds eat, they fly, they do stuff, right? But they know they have a purpose beyond just procurement. And so do you. And they have a God who will fund his creations as they pursue their creator's purpose. And so do you. God pays for his things. He makes us for a purpose and he provides for us as we pursue it, right? And then he moves on, verse 25. And which of you by being anxious can add a single hour to a span of life? He gets back to anxiety. Your anxiety will not add more time. Actually, statistically, it will take time away, right? Because of the weakness of your heart. Your accumulation of possessions will not make you live any longer and not die. Your worry is worthless. It's interesting. If you had only 6 months to live, you ever been asked that question? If you had only 6 months to live, what would you do? Most of us don't say, ooh, I would hustle and try to make me some money. No, what would you do? You would have a whole different set of priorities, and they'd probably be a lot more about people and loved ones. See, when time is short, you realize money's not my priority. It's when you think you have a lot of time that you derail your mission in the pursuit of money. You see it? But we all know it's not the answer, and yet we spend all our time accumulating. It's funny, as I sat there on the plane, and that guy, again, recognized me and asked me about my series. He said, what are you talking about? I said, I'm talking about money. And he said, why? And I was like, well, we have all kinds of people at our church, but we got a lot of young people that they're right out of college. This is their first job. This is the first time really managing a salary for many of them. And so they're trying to figure out how to manage a salary, pay bills. They probably got student debt. There's a lot of them just trying to manage money for the first time. And it has a lot of anxiety. And I just want to speak to them about the anxiety. And he goes, I'll tell you what. He said, I'm here for a conference because I manage people's wealth. That's his job. I was like, okay. And he goes, let me tell you something. The anxiety doesn't go away. He says, you get anxious about little things and how I'm going to pay my bet and how am I pay. He goes, hey, I invest the money in people who have a lot of money. And you know what? They are just as anxious. Because now I got people relying on me. My investments could go south. I could invest in this and it go wrong. I could invest in this and not get a return. I could invest in this and lose everything and have to lay people off. And he said, all that anxiety doesn't leave with the accumulation of things. So if anxiety is driving you to money, money doesn't solve the anxiety. Actually makes it worse. And so be encouraged. Verse 26, Jesus says, if then you're not able to do a small thing as that, why are you anxious about the rest? I love that because Jesus is like, hey, extending your life is light work. And you go, light work to who? You just said none of us can do it. He's like, right. Who are you cutting out of the equation again? God. Extending your life is not hard for God. You're trying to get money together. Why? So you won't die. So I won't starve to death. I won't be naked on the street. And God's like, I got the people who I got. Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin, yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. He talked about don't be anxious about food, and he says, I feed birds. Don't be anxious about clothing, I clothe fields. I make them look gorgeous. People will fly to D.C. to take pictures of flowers, right? He says, I clothe fields. But if God so clothes the grass, which is alive in the field today, and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O you of little faith? Now again, he's cutting more down to the issue. What's the issue? The issue is not really money. The issue is anxiety. And what's the anxiety about? It's I lack faith. Faith in what? I don't think God will take care of me, so I gotta take care of me. Where does that lie come from? It's Genesis 3. It's the same lie. It's the same lie from the garden. If you trust God, he won't take care of you. He will cheat you, Eve. You will miss out. You will not actualize. You will not be satisfied. He's not looking out for you. He's not worthy of your trust. You gotta go, Eve. You gotta go. You gotta hustle. You gotta accumulate. You gotta get your own food because he's not gonna provide for you. And we run away from the mission of God because we don't trust the heart of God. And here at this moment, I remember I had a pastor friend say this. He said, fear is faith in the devil. When I let fear into my heart, it's I believe his lie that God's not a good father who will take care of me. And here in this moment, Jesus says, you know what the problem is? The problem isn't that you love money. The problem isn't that you all want new watches and new cars. The problem is you're scared that you're not gonna be provided for. And you're scared you're not gonna be provided for because you don't trust God at all. So I want money to take his place. Money make me secure, even though it can't. Money can go away in a heartbeat. Money satisfy me, even though it can't. It won't fill the human heart. And so here he says, what are you putting your trust in? In verse 29, he says, don't seek what you're to eat or what you're to drink, and don't be worried. He says, I don't want you to chase money, and I don't want you to worry about it. I don't want you to buy the deception of money that will derail you from life's purpose. Why not? Verse 30, for all the nations of the world seek after those things, and your Father knows that you need him. I love that. He says, don't do that. Why? Because everyone else is doing it. Everybody does it. But that doesn't mean you do it, right? It's the same thing parents say to their kids all the time. Well, if all your friends jumped off a cliff, would you do it? You're like, maybe. What's the cliff? Where would it lead? And he's like, hey, all the nations are chasing accumulation of wealth. So then why wouldn't I? Because you know your Father and you know he provides for you. That's the difference. The difference is people who have faith in a good Father don't have fear that he won't provide for them. My kids don't worry about starving. My kids don't worry about being clothed. Why? Because they have a Father who knows what they need. But if you don't trust that God will provide for you, you will spend a lot of time chasing things to provide for you that really can't. And anxiety, it's contagious. It's contagious in this town. Man, I remember years ago, I was in Houston. I went to an NFL game, which I had not been to very many, but I remember I went to one, and right when I walked in the stadium, there was a girl there, and she had this big bin in front of her. And she was dressed up in it was a Texans game. So she's dressed up in Houston Texans gear, and she rolls this bin out, and she takes the lid off, and it's got t-shirts in it. And she makes eye contact with me, because I'm like the first guy walking by, and she picks one up, rolled up, and she goes, free t-shirt? And I was like, yeah, all right. So I walked over there, and as soon as she said free t-shirt, people just flocked around the thing. And then people started going through it, looking for their size. And she's like, hang on, everybody, there's enough for, hang on, everybody. And people just started cramming against her, fighting, pushing each other, grabbing them. And she was like, guys, there's enough. And she's freaking out. She's getting pushed aside, shoved aside, grown men hitting grandmas, and it's going crazy, ripping this bin apart. And in the middle of it, I just looked at the frenzy and was like, I don't want to be a part of this. And I kind of backed away And I remember at the end of it, looking at one of the shirts, and it was one of those itchy cotton Fruit of the Loom shirts. And after the chaos was over, I noticed no one making eye contact with each other. It's like the shame set in. I was willing to elbow grandma for a $4 t-shirt. What have I done? there's something sick about it, but that anxiety is contagious. All the nations are doing it. It's the natural thing, and you gotta be careful, be on guard and get on defense because it's coming for your heart. As you live in this city, you'll start to think, I gotta get more money, I gotta get more money, I gotta get a bigger house, now I need more square footage, now I need a flatter TV, now I need a fancier car, now I need. And what happens? The time goes by and you miss the reason why you're even here. And you chase things to accumulate. You know what I think of it like? This is weird. As I was studying this, the missing a mission for your purpose, it would be like God calling us on a mission of rescue, because that's why Jesus came. It would be like if you were a Navy SEAL and you were called on a rescue mission. And of course, the government would kit you out. You got all the gear you need, you got your night vision goggles, you got a parachute on, you got all the weapons you need to accomplish the mission of saving those people. And it's like you parachute down, you approach on the beach, you get there, and as you all begin to approach the motion and to get to the place where you're gonna rescue some people, you look back and one of the guys is on the beach just collecting all the parachutes. And you go, what are you doing? He's like, man, I'm gonna sell this. This is awesome. And he starts digging out a little place like, hey, do you need your nods? Give me those night vision goggles. Hey, can you hand me those extra clips? Like give me those bullets. I can sell those bullets. And just starts making a pile of equipment on the beach. You go, what are you doing? Well, this is all expensive equipment, man. Like the government spent a lot on this. I'm gonna keep a little pile of equipment here. You go, that's not why we're here. We were meant to use that gear to accomplish a mission. But if you abandon the mission to just pile up some gear on the beach, you're a fool. And you miss the purpose for why you've been sent. And so Jesus isn't being mean, and Jesus isn't reaching for your wallet. He doesn't need your wallet. But Jesus cares about your heart. And he knows money mixes up your heart bad. And so that's why he moves from this moment about money to talking about your heart. What are you chasing? Don't get derailed by this. Your life is worth more than possessions. You are valuable. Spend your life on that which has value. Don't seek this stuff. Don't get worried. Your Father knows you need them. So instead, seek his kingdom. And these things will be added to you. Don't spend your life trying to build your little kingdom. Spend your life trying to build his. He's got a purpose for your life, and it will be more satisfying. Verse 32, I love this. It's so pastorally caring. Fear not, little flock. It's your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. He doesn't shame us. He doesn't shame you for being scared. But he says, don't be afraid. And he calls you a little flock. Sheep are helpless animals. They have no natural defenses, right? They can't run fast. They can't bite. They're nature's victim, okay? And he calls us that. And it's to show like you feel vulnerable because you are. Yes, every wolf and even like a motivated badger and you're done. He's like, but you got a shepherd. And sheep who have a shepherd don't need to be afraid. And he says, your Father's gonna give you the kingdom. You're trying to build a little sandcastle kingdom that will definitely be gone. The death rate has stayed the same. 1 per person. All these possessions will go away and they won't matter. He said, but I'm building a kingdom that won't fade. And I want you to be a part of that. That's where the conversation started, and this guy derailed the conversation. Jesus is like, let's talk about this, because this is gonna be the greatest threat. You can't chase this, it'll waste your life. Now let's get back to, I am calling you on a mission, and it will cost you, but it's worthy of your life. And let me tell you something, when you pursue my mission, you will understand that is your meaning. That's what you're made for. So Donna and I, our 20-year anniversary is this month. 20 years of marriage, I know. Woo! I know we looked young. We got married in elementary school. I know that's illegal, but never mind. We're gonna cut that out of the whole. But on our 10-year anniversary, I was, like most ministers I know, poor. And, but it was 10 years, it was a decade of marriage. And so I was looking for, trying to find like hotels to stay at. And there was a really nice hotel in Hawaii that I realized I'm right like on the shoulder season. Like if I hit the date right, it's before all the summer travel, and it was 1/3 of the price. So I just scrounged everything, gave blood, whatever I needed to do to get the money. And we went to this really nice hotel in Hawaii. And I remember it struck me like it was the nicest place we ever stayed. And I was looking around, And it struck me while we were there, we were served like we'd never been served before, cared for. It was the best way they could present food was presented. But I was just struck by like, man, there's a lot of people here that just do not seem happy. We'd look around at these tables and these couples aren't talking, looking past each other. And I'm like, this does not equal happy. It doesn't. And some of you are like, well, Ben, I'd love to be wealthy and happy. That's actually my goal. Well, be careful. I remember I had a pastor friend say that once. He said, I have never had someone pull up for a counseling appointment at my office that had a great marriage, great kids, a great ministry, but was crying because they drove a Ford instead of a Tesla. He said, but I've had many people pull up in my office in a brand new car with a nice suit, weeping their eyes out because their marriage and their family was falling apart. Don't be deceived. Your life's valuable, and it's about more than possessions. Amen. And I remember sitting there at the beach like, hey, this place is nice, but we were last week with a group of people that were very wealthy. We looked at each other at one point, we were at this event, and we go, we are the poorest people here by far. I'll give you an example. It was a fundraiser, and at the end, they give you that card that you can fill out how much money you want to put in, and they had suggested donations. The smallest donation was exponentially more money than we could give. And so then they had a write-in box, at the end of the largest numbers. It's like, you can give this amount or this amount or this amount or this amount, or if you want to go hard, write in your own number. And we were like, we're going to write in our own number, but we're taking a lot of zeros out of all this stuff. And it almost felt embarrassing, right? That we're gonna throw our pennies in, yay, for the kingdom, But I'll tell you, we were there with people that had been successful, had made money, but they were at this event because there are languages on the planet today where the Bible's not translated. And they have all kicked in, and they are giving to see the word of God get into every language on the planet. And every year they tick off 10 more, 20 more, 30 more. They are racing towards the goal of getting this book into every language by 2033. None of the languages left will be easy. It will all be costly, but it's so worth it. One of the guys got up there and talked about his accumulation of houses and cars and just realized there are no answers there. But when he got a vision, but I can help people know God, he started doing verse 33. Sell your possessions. He sold the houses, sold the cars. Give to the needy. Provide for yourselves with money bags that do not grow old, with the treasures in heaven that do not fail, where no thief approaches and no moth destroys. You know what I saw at this event that was so different from 10 years ago? At the 20 year, they were happy. Because there were people who realized the success financially didn't bring me satisfaction, but the leaning into God's mission does. It's deeply satisfying. And I want that for you. Whether you make a lot or a little, God made you, and he made your soul for a purpose. And you can be a part of something bigger than yourself, a kingdom that never fades, that thief can't steal. I remember for me, when I was in college, I was a business major at Texas A&M. The interview everyone wanted. I was in a special program called Fellows. They taught us how to dress, how to interview. They took us to Wall Street to learn how to make money. They taught us all the kinds of stuff, how to eat with your spoon, how to put your name tag on the right-hand side so when you shake hands, people see your name and you go, you will remember me. We were just fine-tuned to succeed. And the pinnacle, the interview everybody wanted, was one of the hottest companies in America. It's called Enron. They'd come up with some exciting, new, innovative ways to do accounting, and everybody wanted to be a part of it. And I got to tell you something, the Lord got a hold of my heart, and I thought I was supposed to go into ministry. And so here we are, these dinners and suits and the thing, and people asked me what you want to do, and I said, I think I'm going to be this youth pastor. Nobody was like, well, praise the Lord. They all looked at me like, you are insane. And, I took this youth pastor job at a brand new church. We got an office in a bank building. The office we had only had 2 offices, so the pastor and worship leader got those. I was a youth pastor, so there was a closet with like brooms and such. But if you open the door and kind of came in like this, you could get in there and sit next to the brooms and, write sermons for my youth ministry. And that's what I did. And by the grace of God, some more people started coming to church. We got a little bit bigger office, and I needed a desk, but my budget was somewhere around nothing. And so I remember saying like, well, I don't even have a desk. And this guy at the church said, hey man, let me solve that for you. And he invited me to come with him to his warehouse. And we came to this warehouse, and I gotta tell you, it was the craziest thing I'd ever seen. It was like, that scene in Indiana Jones, the last Indiana Jones, where they roll into that warehouse and there's just crates as far as the eye can see. I walk in his warehouse and there are desks piled 6 high as far as the eye could see. And I said, what is all this? And he said, Enron. He said, when it went down, I paid a couple grand and they said, I can have everything in the building if I can get out there. So me and my son quit our jobs and we just pulled everything out of the building. And so we have it all. And he said, so take whatever you want. So I got a desk that was bigger than my first office. It was like a landing strip, solid oak. And I gotta tell you something, I thought about that every day. I wasn't celebrating that some people lost everything. It was very sad. But as I sat at that desk, I realized I am the guy who pursued the Lord, and I'm at this desk. And there were some people that the deception of money, they thought would make them secure and satisfied, and it destroyed them. There's a way that seems right to the man, but in the end leads to destruction. But God takes care of his kids. And that desk was a reminder of that to me. And so let me just end with this, with warning you in verse 34. He says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. You know what's wild about that? It's the opposite of what you think. It's the opposite of words. Jesus said before, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth will speak. He says, you wanna know what's in someone's heart? Listen to their words, because they can't hide it eventually. Out of the overflow of your heart, the mouth will speak. Your mouth follows your heart. So if you're happy, happy words are gonna come out. You're stressed, stress stuff's gonna come out. You're angry, it's gonna come out, either actively or passive aggressively. We're all gonna know about it at some point, because out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth will speak. But he says something different about money. He says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be. He doesn't say where your heart is, that's where your treasure will go. No, where your heart is, that's where your mouth will go. But where you put your money, that's where your heart goes. Your words follow your heart. Your money leads your heart. He says, where you start putting your money, that'll start to be what you care about. And so that's why he encourages them, sell your possessions, give to the needy. That's why I encourage you to do that. It's not because God wants your money. It's not because we're desperate for your money. That's why we did giving first, and then I said this. I think it's good for your own soul, because the accumulation of money will wrap itself around your heart. And a way to rebel against that lie is to give money away. It's a rebellion against the lie that money is my security. When you give money away, you say, no, I trust God to take care of me, and I'm gonna give money for his purposes, for his glory. If people saw us do that, it would force them to take our God seriously. Because if we sing loud, and read a lot, but don't give money, then they all know what really has our heart. But if we give generously, and people realize they care more about the mission of God than they do about the mission of money, then maybe that God of theirs is real. And when you do that, let me tell you something. You might find joy you didn't expect. It's not in accumulating, but it's in giving your life to a mission that matters more.